Yes, good evening everyone and welcome to the last session. So I hope IA3 and IA4 was as good as IA1 and 2. Yes, all right, very good. So continuing with our discussion where we left in the last session talking about aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So when I use the word aggregate demand, can I say that it is the overall demand of goods and services in the economy? When I say the word aggregate demand, can I say that to be the good and demand of the economy as a whole? Now, if my economy is growing and people have jobs, unemployment status is low, and everybody has job, everybody has purchasing power, do you think my aggregate demand would be high or low? Aggregate demand would be high or low? Would it show the high, right? So aggregate demand is nothing but the relationship between the price and the demand divided by, decided by the whole of the economy. Now, if the economy is doing good and everybody has job, do you think my aggregate demand curve will shift to the right? When or when the interest rate reduces in the market, do you think the aggregate demand again would shift to the right? Because people would be able to get the, people will be able to get the loan at a lower cost. Now, tell me what would happen if current exchange rate can also have an impact on my demand. Think how. If my rupee appreciates, do you think my demand curve will shift to the right or to the left? My rupee appreciates. So will it shift to the right or to the left? So people would prefer to import the goods or buy it in India. Tell me that way. If my rupee appreciates, where my $1 becomes 50 rupees. Right? And in case, so do you think that currency exchange rate is also an important factor to consider? Because what should be the value of rupee? Exactly. It shouldn't be too low. It shouldn't be too high. It should be a moderate one to make sure that export and import are in balanced state. But definitely the value of my exchange rate will also have an impact on the aggregate demand of that goods in the economy, right? Now, the purchasing power or the employment status will also have an impact. So can I also say that aggregate demand is nothing but the overall understanding of the economy based on purchasing power, based on employment status of the people, based on purchasing power of the people? Can I say this is an aggregate demand helps us to understand how the people are going to buy the goods based on their capability to buy the goods, based on the employment status, based on their how the economy is performing? Can we understand that? So looking at aggregate demand, will I be able to get an overall picture of the economy? Will I be able to get the overall picture of the economy? Yes, absolutely. Now, apart from aggregate demand, there is something called the aggregate supply curve. Now, in aggregate supply curve, we have a short run and long run. So if I take you back to the production function, can somebody help me to remember what was short run and what was long run? Short one, at least one factor of production is going to be fixed, and long run, all are variable. So in the short run, can you see that my short run average, short run aggregate supply curve is upward sloping? Whereas the long run, it is a vertical line. When I look at the long run aggregate supply as a vertical line, what does it mean? Do you think in the long run, will the supply get impacted by the price, or other factors of production may have an impact, but price will have no impact on that? Price is going to have no impact in the long run. And that's why you could see that long run aggregate supply curve is in vertical line. Irrespective of the price, the quantity is not changing. So what do you think can help to change the aggregate supply curve to the right or left? What do you think? Will the change in technology, change in software would help you to change the long run aggregate supply curve to the right or to the left, or the natural resources? Right? But definitely price is not the factor. In the short run, what impacts the aggregate supply curve? In the short run, what impacts the aggregate supply curve? The price will have an impact, right? And in the long run, the technology, the natural resources, and anything else can cause a shift, but otherwise the price is going to have no impact in the long run, where all the factors of production can be variable. So we have to be very much clear about the nature of the curve and why it is a vertical line. So it is a vertical line because in the long run, the price is not going to have an impact on the supply curve. Apart from price, other factors of production, the natural resources may have an impact, but definitely not the price having an impact on it. And in the long run, the firms would have already be adjusted to the changes in the price. Manmeet says, can there be movement along the curve for the long run? There can be, Manmeet, because see, if you're changing, what is happening, your demand is not changing. Your demand is just constant. You can see here in the long run, even if you're changing the price. And shift can happen only because of changes in the other factors, the natural resources, technology, and so on. Yes, you can have a movement. But in the long run, what happens, Manmeet, generally it is already assumed by the firms that the changes in price has already been considered in the short run. So not much impact could be seen in the long run. That's the reason why it's a vertical line. Because if my prices would change, the cost of production goes up, the prices would get adjusted. So that has already been considered by the firm. So that's the reason why price becomes discounted in the long run in the general scenario. Is that clear? Because already the firms would have accounted for it. Say, for example, during Diwali, if I say that the prices of the goods would increase, but that I know is a short-term impact, and that has already been accounted for by the firm in the demand forecasting. So that has already been accounted for. In something unusual happens, that gets accounted for in the long run. Because even if the price change could be happened because of the change in the cost of production or something that has already been accounted for. Is that clear, Manmeet? And if the price goes up, the cost of production would definitely have gone up. So that's the reason why the firm is adjusting to it. So that would always be accounted for. So it's not going to be the major impact that you would see of the price in the long run. Because when you say long run, one need to understand that we are changing the plant size, we are changing the location of the plant, we're changing the number of machines. Everything has become variable. Now, when will Manmeet, any company, go for the long term, all the factors of production variable? When you're going to believe the fact that this demand is going to be there for a longer period? Yes, Manmeet. So just to continue with the discussion, since you got disconnected. Yeah, so I have already been accounting for the change in price, and that's the reason why I went for expansion of the plant size. I went for change in the number of machines, number of laborers, because I already accounted for the change in price, and not by the seasonal change in demand. I'm going to go to for the long run aggregate supply curve, right? Yes, Manmeet, clear? Because you've already done that. Will happen in the short run. What you're saying, Manmeet, will happen in the short run. Or even in the short run, you would see that when the government increases the tax, the short and aggregate supply will shift to the left. When government reduces the tax, it will shift to the right, or change in price. All this would get accounted for in the short run. Long run, you would see, Manmeet, any changes happening. Maybe suddenly the say, for example, the raw material shortage has happened in the market. Yes, definitely. So price fluctuation would be the short run that you would get to see the impact. Long run, generally the impact would be because of changes in the whole of technology changes, natural resources shortage happening. So all those factors which was not there in the short run would be considered in the long run. The whole software itself has changed. Or see, just the transition that's happening in the companies from in the automobile industry or the economy as a whole, then it is a long run impact, and their prices may not be the factor, the major factor. Now, in the case, just imagine, okay, now this is my equilibrium position where my aggregate demand, aggregate supply, and my long run meets here. This is my equilibrium position to whatever is going to be my optimum usage of all the resources and so on. But just imagine, in case if there is a shift in the natural resources and natural resources become cheaper or much readily available, and my long run equilibrium shifts to the right, can happen. Now what is going to happen? Or if the long run has shifted, or it is, say, for example, the short run aggregate demand has shifted, or short run aggregate supply curve has shifted. But in the long run, what's going to happen? Do you think it will come back to its original position in case if the disequilibrium happens because of shift in the aggregate demand curve or aggregate supply curve? Then what's going to happen in the long run? If my AD or the AS curve shifts, do you think what's going to happen after that? Now, will that be, now just imagine, okay, aggregate demand curve shifted to the right. Okay, now what's happening? This is my position, but equilibrium is over here. What will happen? Aggregate demand curve has shifted to the right. Now what will happen? Now, will this be able to sustain for longer period, or again in the economy, you would see that it will come back to the supply will also shift, and then again, what will happen? Again, supply would also shift to the right. Then what is going to happen ultimately again? Will it come back to the normal price and the quantity output? They'll keep on adjusting, and again, it will come back to the equilibrium position. So in the economy, even if there is a shift in the aggregate demand or the aggregate supply curve, in the long run, it will try to come back to its equilibrium position. So whenever you see a short run shift in the demand or short run shift in the supply, in the long run, will it come back to its optimum position where people have the purchasing power, people have the resources to produce the goods, people will buy the goods only how much is required, and that was just a short run change in demand of the goods, but in the long run, it will come back to its original level. Yes, Manmeet, it can be changed. It can be changed. Ultimately, it can be. So what will happen when aggregate demand and aggregate supply changes? And in the case in the long run, when they have to change the plant size also, then my long run aggregate supply curve would also shift to the right. Yes, it will also shift to the right. Yes, it can happen. So it will move to the new equilibrium long run aggregate supply. Now just imagine, yes, when will the firm would move to a new equilibrium? When the economy as a whole is growing. When the economy as a whole is growing because of all the resources that the demand has grown in the long run in such a way that the firm need this demand on a constant basis. That means overall economy has grown, GDP of the country has grown, and so the reason the firms need to set up new, yes, the income increases, then my equilibrium can shift to the new position for. Absolutely. Absolutely, the new equilibrium point can be set up. But for that, if you see the new equilibrium point when it is going to come into picture, then definitely the entire demand, supply, everything has shifted. And when is that going to be possible? When everything will shift, when is that possible? When everything has shifted to the right, when is that possible? When my economy as a whole is going to do great. An economy as a whole would require that much of production, only then it's going to happen that my entire equilibrium shifts to the right. And then you could see the change in quantity, change in the price level. It can happen. But the economy as a whole has to grow for that. Any questions here? Absolutely. Then it can shift in the long run. But in the short run, if it is shifting, it may come back to its equilibrium position. Yes, it can attain. It can be attained, Naveen, no problem. It can be attained. The whole long run aggregate supply curve can shift to the right, but under which supply condition would it shift? When will the firms will be ready, the economy would be ready to set up the new supply of goods forever in the market? Exactly, you're absolutely right, Naveen. But only if the short-run shift in demand and supply is happening, Naveen, then what's going to happen? It will come back to its original equilibrium point in some time or the other. Absolutely right. There was somebody who has raised hand. Any question? Yes, Kumar Baba. Yes, Kumar Baba. Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, madam. Ma'am, in async contact, we have seen one example where that equilibrium point on LS curve is moving upward.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we just mentioned.
What is that condition? How it happens? I did not understand async contact actually.
Okay, so what happens in the short run when your aggregate demand curve is shifting to the right, my aggregate supply curve is shifting to the right. But when will long run aggregate supply shift to the right will happen when the economy as a whole thinks that this becomes my permanent change in the demand, permanent change in the price and the quantity. So when the overall change in the employment status, purchasing power of the people in the economy as a whole changes, so that new plant setup has to be done and new natural resources has to be, new raw materials has to be put into production, then the long run aggregate supply curve would also shift to the right and you will see a new equilibrium point under that scenario. But in case it is an artificial change in the demand or artificial change in the supply or the supply increased too much, then this was just a short-term effect, maybe some kind of the ripple that you could see in the economy. Then again, that long-run aggregate supply would continue to remain at this position. And whatever had been the shift in the demand and the supply in the short term will come back to its original position in some time, if it's not a permanent change. When the economy as a whole is not growing, it was just one of the factors that contributed to the increase in the demand and increase in the supply by the firms. But firms cannot sustain that for a longer period because of shortage of the raw materials. Then it will come back to its original position equilibrium point. Is that clear?
Yeah, it's clear. Yeah.
So it's more like the permanent effect. So as a firm, as an economy, I'm going to be more happy when the whole of the equilibrium can shift to the right. And the whole of the equilibrium itself can shift to the right, where I can see at the same price, more output is being supplied, or at a lower price, more output is being supplied. And you come to know, okay, economy as a whole is growing. So the whole demand for the products has increased in the market. The whole GDP, the whole aggregate demand, people have good purchasing power. People are ready to spend money on goods and services. Then you see economy as a whole is growing. Yes? So can you see, adjust to the sustainable output of the economy. And short run is not the sustainable. Short run is more that the demand was there and it was supplied by some or the other method. But when the long run itself is shifting, that means plants are ready to set up, make up a new setup, new machines, new plant location, new labors, everything new arrangement. And that investment, the firms are ready to do it only if it looks like a long-term demand of the goods and services in the market. Any questions, anyone? Yes, Kumar Baba, I think I have answered your question.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah. Is that clear? Anyone, any question? This is very important. And as an economy, when do you think India is going to be considered as a developed economy? What do you think will happen to my overall equilibrium point? When economy as a whole, I am thinking it would grow, and from developing, it will move to developed economy. Do you think this equilibrium point is going to shift to the right? The long run will shift to the right in the long? Yes. And if it shifts to the left, what does it indicate? If it shifts to the left, what does it indicate? Good or bad for all of us? Bad. Lagging. Right. Now coming to business cycle, you've gone through it in the async material. Sri Lanka, very good example, Ramesh. Now, Sri Lanka, since he has taken up the example, Ramesh, Sri Lanka, what was the reason for the entire equilibrium point to shift to the left? What was the entire reason? What was the reason? Exactly. And that has led to the overall shift that's happening. Right. Yeah. Now coming to business cycle. Now, when you look at the, look at the business cycle. So when I look at the business cycle, we have the expansion, peak, contraction, and the trough. Now, looking at the economy, the different stages, now comparing your COVID and looking at the condition of the economy right now, where do you place India? We all know the theory part of it, right? So expansion economy is doing great, output is increasing, and peak is going to be the highest point where everything is going to be good. And after that, there would be a stagnation that you get to see. Recession would be a point where the things are falling. And then comes a trough, is the lowest point where price and output both are going to be the lowest over here. Right? So maybe the recession, expansion, we are trying to move to that. Definitely we are trying to move ourselves from trough to trough. We did not, but from recession, we're trying to move to somewhere to expansion, trying to be there. Nishant, right now, see, if you look at the equilibrium, so then the GDP would have been at a point, Nishant question. So GDP would have been a point where it was as per the forecasted data. But is it as per the forecasted data, Nishant? No. So that means we are still struggling to be at that point, right? Because of whatever the data factors were. Yes, whatever the factors were. And we definitely reached a stage of recession and unemployment status was hit. And are you aware of the fact that during the time when COVID was just starting, it was that interest rates was lowered by the RBI? Do we understand the reason for the same? Push money into more spending. So what was the reason? It was an artificial scenario where RBI wanted to infuse liquidity into the economy. Yes, RBI wanted to infuse liquidity into the economy. That was an artificial status. Yes. So do you think it was a push made by the RBI to make sure that we have enough of liquidity so that the economy can be improved and maybe it cannot be moved to the trough stage? It could not be moved to push to the trough stage. Basap, I'll answer your question, but a little off the track, but definitely would answer it. Right? So that was the reason. Now, do you think the business cycle, the phase where the economy belongs, is an important criteria to be considered? Yeah. Yes. So business cycle is an important parameter to be considered. Now, you would see that when the economy is at expanding, it will impact the government policies. Now, there's one question that came from one of the students was, do you think our Nirav Modi and all Vijay Mallya is going to affect my business cycle, or will it impact the performance of my economy to a certain extent? Yes, Ramesh. So, see, all these NPAs, Nirav Modi case, Vijay Mallya case, they are definitely, yes, they're definitely a kind of blow that they give to the economy. They do have an impact. But apart from those factors, there are other things, including how is my economy in terms of demand and supply as well. How my economy is going to be performing as in terms of demand and supply will also be, yes, we also be letting us know that how would be the performance of the economy. How would be the performance of the economy as a whole. So you can see here there is an expansion, peak, recession, and the trough stage that you have it. So if you look at overall picture of the economy, so when the COVID came into picture, there was almost the unemployment increase, there could be a phase of recession, And when RBI took the action of infusing liquidity into the economy by reducing the interest rates, there was also a move, another move made by the RBI was loan moratorium. If you all are aware of that fact, loan moratorium. Now, do you think that was also an effort made by RBI to make sure that keep the money safe, that you do not pay us the money right now and later on you can make the payment? So it was more a kind of infusing confidence into the people in terms of that keep your money, you don't have to pay your EMIs now, pay later. Yes, that was another way of infusing a kind of confidence in the economy. Yes, the market sentiments. Because otherwise, if the corrective actions wouldn't have been taken place, then the recession could have been moved to tough stage as well. And this would have become a little bad stage for us. So that was the reason. So your business cycle, your performance of the economy, do you think my aggregate demand, my aggregate supply curve would also have an impact on the business cycle? The position of my business cycle would also depend upon the aggregate demand and the aggregate supply curve. Yes. It will also be depending upon aggregate demand and aggregate supply curve. Right. Absolutely right. Injecting the money. Oh, Basappa says injecting the money to economy means is this printing currency? No, not at all, Basappa. Now, Basappa, tell me, if RBI could print any number of notes that they desire, what is going to happen to the economy? Now, when I have to pay 1 lakh of rupees to buy 1 kg of tomato, inflation would be very high. You know what will happen, Basappa? Maybe the rupee would have to be replaced with some other currency. Rupee would have to get, yes, the value of currency is going to fall. So Venezuela happened that case. So you really cannot be doing that. Yes, that cannot be the solution to the problem at all. That cannot be the solution to the problem at all. So definitely, because the prices of the goods would increase so much that you will be spending, ending up spending too much on the goods and services. Yeah. Then comes the phase of the expansion. Then peak, GDP reaches its maximum. Now that's going to only happen when the peak is their highest point of the economy, where businesses can't produce any more or hire more people. That's the peak, max, saturation. And after saturation, what's going to happen again is going to be a contraction or the recession, where the businesses will start reducing the production, the layoff of people would happen, unemployment would increase. If unemployment increases, what happens to my GDP? If unemployment increases, what happens to my GDP? Would decrease. Yes, banks will stop lending money and so on, right? Yes. Can government predict peak beforehand? Yes, Manvi, there are a lot of indicators which can help you to predict that where. So your economy starts to grow, and then it reaches a saturation point where there is no growth, further growth in demand is happening. Your GDP, yes, there are a lot of indicators. Naveen is also helping us to know that. So definitely there are leading, lagging indicators which helps you to understand or predict your business cycle. So just like in the case of companies, we have the forecasting done. In the same case, in the case of economies, we have indicators who are going to help us to understand where my economy is moving. So, Kumar Baba, you see when the economy has reached its saturation, no further growth is happening, GDP becomes constant there, and businesses' output has become constant, then you see that again the reverse is going to start now. Kumar, right now what we see in the economy, we are at moving from recession towards the expansion on the peak. So right now we are definitely not at saturation point. As a developing economy, we are definitely not at the saturation point. No, Pranay. So you will realize that your economy has reached the top, has reached the peak when your GDP has touched a maximum possible GDP. So basically it happens that your firms have become constant. There's stagnancy has come in the economy and nothing more is happening to that. So there is no hiring, no firing, the demand is constant, everything becomes very, very stable. So you know this is a peak and then reverse is going to happen in some time. It is trying to move Nishan to the expansion stage, but there was a recession during the time of COVID. Now it is trying to move there. So did we see during the time of COVID, there was an unemployment increase in the economy, and that's why that action was taken by the economy, by the RBI of infusing liquidity and so on. Right? So just trying to be there, where it is trying to put the things right back. Entire automobile industry, which is a major contributor to our GDP, was the automobile sector hit during the time of COVID? Yes. So again, automobile industry, which is a major contributor of GDP to our economy, got hit. So all this is going to, yes, all this was the unemployment increase. So that is the indication. And also, if you look at the forecasted data of inflation, how much is the inflation going on in the economy? We'll be going to inflation as well. Do you think inflation in India is under control or has it reached high? It's greater than 4%. Good or bad? Bad. Do we need to put it in control? WPI is 14%, not within. So do we need to bring it down? Yes, it has to be brought in control. Do you think government is going to increase the interest rates in the near future? It has to. Doesn't have a choice. It has to bring it back. Yes. Right. Right. Now, trust is the Fed is the boss for any yes, Praveen. Do you think the Fed also impacts our interest rates and inflation in the economy? Yes, definitely. Yeah. So that was about the business cycle, unemployment, and the okay. Vandana says how the government or RBI take decision of printing the currency. So Vandana, there are certain calculations based on the reserves that the government has it, the backup that is has it, the certain calculations based on which the reserves of the government, it is decided that how much currency can be printed by the RBI. It cannot print any number of currency because then it's going to have a negative impact. Your value of the currency is going to get eroded, and that's not going to be good for the economy. Yeah. Now, coming to connecting the dots. Okay, Rohit, very interesting question. How do we get impacted by the economic decisions made by other countries? Especially US, if you ask Rohit, does even the simplest of the simplest decision, will the subprime crisis of 2008, did it impact us or not? 2008 financial crisis, did it impact us? Did it impact? Yes, it did. Why did it impact us? Are we all interconnected to the global economy in terms of export, import, IT industry, open economy, right? Even the simplest stock market, if you see, if the stock market closes red in the US market, what happens to our Indian market on Monday morning? Red. So Basapa, we all are in global economy. We are connected with each other, and all the kind of loans that the World Bank provides to the countries is it in dollars. So do you think that is going to have an impact on our currency as well? Absolutely. It's going to have an impact. We all are interconnected. The World Bank is going to give us the demand for the US currency. And if that falls down, immediately all other economies are getting impacted. Crude oil prices will get impacted. Does it have an impact on our economy or not? Look at inflation. Can we say that one of the contribution to inflation is the crude oil prices? Can we say that? One of the reasons for the inflation again can be the crude oil prices? And what are we doing? Importing or exporting crude oil? Ukraine crisis, which has led to the crude oil prices. Importing. What has happened? So do you think we all are interconnected, whether we like it or we don't like it, but we all are interconnected with each other? And if you remember the very first session in economics when I took you through, we said that we all are interconnected, whether it is the household, the company, the government, or the world economy. Right? So we all are interconnected. We all are a global economy. And will my simple, okay, GDP, when you're looking at the expenditure method, it says consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus exports minus imports. So when moment I'm talking about exports and imports, am I getting interconnected with other economies of the world? Am I getting connected with the other economies? Will my GDP get impacted? Yes. Do you think if my GDP gets impacted, my unemployment status would get impacted? Yes. So we all are interconnected. Now, Basapa, does that answer your question? Where you import more and even when you export money. Even if I'm exporting and if the currency of that country gets impacted, will it impact my GDP again? Yes, again. So if my import and exports get impacted, my GDP gets impacted. Moment my GDP gets impacted, all other factors, inflation, interest rates, unemployment, everything gets impacted. So one master stroke is, whenever you get confused, one master stroke always remember is GDP is always given as consumption plus investment made by the companies plus government expenditure plus all your exports minus your imports. So consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus exports minus imports. So whenever you get confused that how is the economy doing, so just see that whether people have jobs or don't have jobs. Now, if people would have jobs, the consumption of goods by the people would increase. If the consumption of goods by people would increase, investment made by the companies would increase. That would increase the government expenditure. Exports would increase and imports would come down. So definitely my GDP would increase. When my GDP would increase, that is going to give an indication of how healthy is my economy. If my healthy economy is there, then maybe we can move from recession to expansion or recession to peak, depending upon how much growth is happening, right? So Rohit, there is a political angle to it, but if they and the other party always thinks that we are the superpowers and our financial position would not get impacted because of this war. So that's the reason. Even if you look at Russia, Ukraine war, and India also is India taking some kind of benefit in terms of import of crude oil prices because of the Russia-Ukraine war? Is any kind of benefit that it's trying to exploit? Right? But do you think Russia or the Ukraine is the Russia? Yes, is the Russia not suffering because of the war, or will Russia suffer because of the war in the long run? What do you think? Exactly, will suffer. It will suffer, but they are all trying to find out its way, and definitely there is a political angle, but they try to find out their way and try to move out of that. Yes, absolutely. So there are a lot of different angles to it. Game theory. Okay. Because Abhinav, government itself is in a great fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is there. The revenues of the government are much less as compared to the expenditures because of the bad phase that we had gone through the last 2 years. The benefit is not coming to us. Right? Now, let me take you to the another interesting point where we try to understand the different macroeconomic indicators in terms of inflation, unemployment, and so on. Now, let's look at these economic policies. Okay, very interesting. It's just like a Bollywood story if you start connecting the dots. And whether you are from finance background or does not from finance background, but do you think this inflation, interest rates, and money supply impact us, all of us, for that reason? Even the normal common man, do we get impacted by the inflation, interest rates, and the money supply? Yes. Now, in the economy, there are two policies that the government use to control the economy. One is the monetary policy and the other one is called the fiscal policy. These are the only two tools that the government has it. All right, Sudeep, I would repeat that part later once I finish it because I've just moved from that discussion. In case I forget, do remind me at the end. I'll do that. Right, so there are two policies which the RBI uses for controlling, the government uses for controlling the entire economy. One is called the monetary policy and the other one is called the fiscal policy. When I look at monetary policy, it has to control the inflation and interest rates. So during the time of COVID, when we saw that RBI predicted, in fact, RBI predicted the situation even before the lockdown was announced on 21st March. Before that itself, the interest rates was reduced by the RBI, keeping in mind that the inflation is going to increase and inflation would increase, people would lose jobs and so on. So keeping all that factors in mind, RBI reduced the interest rate. So monetary policy is always to control the supply of money in the economy, to control the inflation and interest rates in the economy. And fiscal policy is to do more with the government tax and the spending by the center. Let me just take you through the link that I have mentioned in the PPT. So only two tools the government has got. One is called monetary policy. So please remember, monetary policy is just to control the interest rates and inflation. So basically it deals with the supply of money. Whereas fiscal policy is where the government income and expenditure, how much revenue it is earning and how much is the expenditure that the government can do it, how much money it should spend to support the economic activity. Now, during the time of COVID, do you think the government expenditure would have increased or reduced? What would have happened? Increased. Now, if the government expenditure would have increased, and in order to promote few of the industries, government would have reduced the tax rates, do you think revenue would have got hit? Yes, absolutely. So fiscal policy deals with how much money it should be spending to support the economic activity and how much revenue it should be earning so that the economy keeps on running smoothly. So how much money RBI is able to receive, government is able to receive the money and how much money it is able to spend, right? So in case that is determined using the fiscal policy. So when the, what is the source of revenue for the government in India? Tax. Tax is the source of revenue. So in case if the government is receiving more revenue than it has to spend, then it is called a surplus. But during COVID, what happened? The revenue that the government got from tax was less as compared to the expenditure. So what would it lead to? It would lead to a fiscal deficit where the expenditure of the government was more as compared to the surplus. Now, what will the government do? My expenditure is so much, but the money which I have received from tax is less. How should I fund that money? I need to borrow. Print money, Praneeth. No, I can't print money. Printing money would lead to inflation. I can't print money. I have to borrow money from either from treasury bills or from overseas market, right? Print additional money would be the last thing the company would firm economy would want to do it because it is going to increase the inflation in the economy. Now, in case there is an economic downturn, the economy may decide to open up its coffers, spend more on building projects, welfare, and so on. So more government, what is the initiative it wants? That if the economy is not doing good, let me push the economy to perform so that the economy can be brought down to normal scenario. And again, government keeps on fluctuating the taxes on the corporates, on the retail people. So there could be a revenue system that can be generated. Yes, borrow from the world or sell the bonds in the market. Treasury bills could be the absolutely. So when you talk about fiscal policy, it aims at economic growth of the price stability so that the level of price can be controlled in the market. Employment can be improved. So remember, only two tools the government has got, monetary and fiscal. Monetary can only be used for controlling the supply of money, inflation, interest rates, and so on. Fiscal policy would deal with the taxation in terms of revenue and expenditure by the government. That's going to be using the fiscal policy, right? So that is the monetary and the fiscal policy with the two tools that the government has it. So Abhinav, the printing of money is just not a decision of the RBI on a random basis. Definitely it has to be done on the basis of reserves that the government has it. On that basis, it can be done. Because this, yes, it cannot be just, done on a random basis. So it would be the last resort of the government. Now that is what happened in the case of Venezuela when the inflation went too high and it was too difficult for them to control and they started printing the note. But that would be the last resort that the economy would want to go for. They would definitely be going for borrowing money and they know that it's a short-term effect. And the short-term effect can be corrected in the long run. So they will borrow money from the international market. They'll borrow money from, say, for example, domestic market using the money market instruments, government bonds, treasury bills. But in the long run, if they think that there is no resort available, then they would have to go for printing of money, but not in the first stance. Is that clear? Absolutely. So, Kumar Baba, the entire money supply is under the control of RBI. Government is going to control the, RBI anyways is a representative and doing the work of the government itself. So how does it matter? But the entire inflation, interest rate, anything to do with the supply of money is under the control of RBI. Anything that to do with the supply of money is under the control of RBI. Nishant has asked a question. A person pays income tax again, and again pays GST on all the goods and services. How is this justified? Now, Nishant, income tax that you pay is on the income that you have earned, 30%, 20%, whatever tax bracket you belong to. And GST you pay for what reason? Goods and services tax. It is paid at goods and services tax, which was earlier the VAT we used to pay. Yes, it is sad though. In India, we end up paying, if you are earning too much of money, and actually, if you look at the amount of tax that we pay to the government, it's shocking. It's really shocking. And over and above that, whatever I paid, even in this case, also, if you see that we have paid 30% of the salary that I have earned, still I make that investment in the stock market. Still, do I have to pay tax to the government on the profits that I have gained? Capital gain tax, do I have to pay property if I have to purchase? That's how it is. How justified it is, I wouldn't comment on that, but we'll get into another angle altogether. But definitely we do end up paying for that because anything that you earn or anything that you buy, anything that you spend at the restaurant, we end up paying the goods and services tax on that as well. And that's why a lot of the crash happened in the market during the time when actually the GST was introduced. But in the long run, it may help the overall growth of the economy. Sudeep says decreasing repo rate could be one option. In which context, Sudeep? Yes, Praleen. So that is a discussion that will go into unlimited loop. Unlimited loop. Yes, so decreasing repo rate. So why does RBI reduces the repo rate? What is a repo rate? Repo rate is the rate at which RBI gives out loans to the people. So during the pandemic situation, March 2021, RBI did, March 2020, RBI did reduce the repo rate. And that's why the interest rates in the economy as a whole came down. RBI reduced the repo rate. So the rate at which RBI gives out loan to the banks reduces. Rate at which RBI gives out the loans reduces. Right? RBI reduces the repo rate. That is how the interest rates in the economy can be controlled. Yes. The whole control in economy is going to come from that, where RBI reduces the repo rate, so the interest rates in the economy itself comes down. Now coming to inflation. So when I say, Sudeep, I hope that question is answered, that when RBI reduces the interest rates, the overall rate at which the banks can borrow money reduces. And since the rate at which banks can borrow money reduces, the banks are able to give out loans to people at a lower rate of interest. The rate at which banks are able to give out money is going to reduce. Yes. So then that is the reason why the overall interest rates in the economy reduces. And when interest rate reduces, it is the loan rate that reduces, as well as the deposit rate also reduces. Yeah. Nishant says during demonetization, when new currency was printed. So Nishant, it was just a replacement of the old currency. Yes. It was just a replacement of the old currency. So it was just that the notes were taken. Yes, it was just a replacement, not the new notes. It was just a replacement of the old one. And that's why the people were asked to surrender the old notes. How do RBI gets money? Is it the taxes we pay? Definitely. RBI. So Rohit, we pay the tax to the government. RBI gets the supply of, RBI controls the supply of money through the repo and the reverse repo rates. So the rate at which RBI gives out money to the banks is called the repo rate. And the rate at which RBI borrows money from the commercial banks, it can also need money. That is called the reverse repo rate. The taxes that we pay, the revenue, it becomes the revenue for the government. Manmeet, RBI is not give money and how? So RBI has the money. And banks' business is to lend money to the other parties. Now, where will the banks get the money for lending? Vishwadeep, RR is greater than RR reverse repo, you mean to say? Vishwadeep, you mean to say repo rate? Yes, repo rate is always greater than the reverse repo rate. It's always that RBI gives out loan at a higher rate and takes loan from the banks at a lower rate of interest. It is always that way. I'll tell you. Give me 2 minutes. I'll answer all your questions. Just give me 2 minutes, okay? Let's understand how does it work. Now, RBI has printed the notes in the economy. Now, RBI needs funding. What is the source of funding for the RBI? And RBI needs money for 2 months or 3 months. Or if RBI wants to pull back the money from the economy, what will it do? 2 things it can do. If RBI wants to pull back the money from the economy, how will it pull back? If RBI wants to pull back money, how will it pull back money? 2 things. Either it would increase the repo rate. So the rate at which it is going to give out loans to the banks, it's going to increase. If the repo rate increases, what would happen? The bank is going to pass on the higher rate of interest to the investors as well, right? It's clicking now. Good, money. So increase the repo rate. So money is going to go back to the economy. If the repo rate is increased, the rate of interest is going to increase. So banks are going to get the money at a higher rate of interest from RBI. So banks will pass on higher rate of interest. Now, did you see that during the time of COVID, or did we notice that the real estate sector, which was not doing good during the time, did you notice that when interest rates was reduced and even the stamp duty was reduced by the government, did you see a positive impact on the real estate sector? Did you see boom? Yes. Then what happened again? Very much. Yes. Then only for a short period the stamp duty rates were reduced and the interest rates were low in the market. That gave a push to the real estate sector. Now tell me one thing, the push to the real estate sector, does it infuses liquidity in the economy or not? Does it lead to the growth of the banks or not? Does it lead to the growth of the economy or not? Absolutely. So what you see in the economy, it's all the cascading effect. It's all the interconnected effect that we all can see. It's all the interconnected effect that we get to see in the economy, right? So now when there is inflation in the economy, what happens? There's too much of supply of money. So if I am paying 10,000 rupees to buy 1 kg of tomato, what is happening? Is it a sign of a good economy, a healthy economy, or an unhealthy economy? Unhealthy economy. Now, if I have, what will RBI do in this case? Government is not going to do anything. So it has to do something with the supply of money. So it has to do something with the supply of money. How to pull back the supply of money from the economy? Increase the repo rate or reduce the repo rate? I want to decrease the supply of money. Reduce or increase, Rekha? Increase the repo rate. So the banks are going to, rate of interest would increase in the bank, Rekha. So if the rate of interest increases, do you think everybody would take loan? Would you think people will take loan if the rate of interest is 15% for the home loan? Or for the personal loan, it is 25%. Less people would take loan. If less people will take loan, what will happen to the supply of money? If less people would take loan, what supply of money would come down? If supply of money would come down, what will happen to inflation? It will come back to normal. Now, during the time of COVID, what did government, RBI wanted? Supply of money to increase or decrease? What did RBI wanted? Increase. So when it wanted to increase the supply of money, what did it do? Reduced repo rate. RBI just reduces the repo rate. When it reduces the repo rate, all the interest rates gets impacted. I think Divya has given us one. Increasing the repo, borrowing for bank becomes costlier. They will push the lending interest to customers. Customers would avoid taking loans, low money supply. Absolutely right. You've got it. Absolutely right, Divya. Right? Now, this inflation. So there are two, what you say, Dimak. One is inflation that can kill us. Now, Rohit, during the last 2 years, during the time of 2020 and 21, did you notice that RBI had changed the repo rate very frequently? And when the economy is stable, RBI may change it once in 2 years also. Did you notice that RBI changed during the time of 2020 till 2021? Did you notice the number of times the RBI has changed the repo rate? Yes. So what happens, Shama? If the government is going to sell bonds in the market at a higher rate of interest, do you think people would make investment in the bond? Would you think people will make investment in the bond? Will the money go back to the government? Will the supply of money be pulled back from the economy and goes to the government? By buying and selling of the bonds in the market, will that happen? Again, the current supply of money can be controlled, right? So government finds out different ways through which the supply of money can be reduced. Now just look at India's inflation. I put all the link in your PPT, okay, just for your reference. Look at this. April 2021. This is again July that you can see, October, January, and right now what you can see here, India's inflation rate. Right? Now, this is the inflation that you get to see for inflation rate 6.95, 6.07. March 2022 is the reference that you get to see here. So this is the information that you get. Very good site for the getting the understanding. So Ashish, there are multiple ways of calculating the inflation by looking at what has been the prices of goods in the market, the different measures for doing it. There is retail index, CPI, or wholesale price index, how much is the goods prices have grown in the past. So different ways of calculating the inflation. Government bond, Nishant, is, see, what is a bond? A kind of a financial instrument through which government can borrow money. And the government is going to pay you a fixed rate of interest or a variable rate of interest. Now, say, for example, Nishant, RBI needs funding because of the fiscal deficit of the government to cover for those expenses. So RBI will issue a bond. There is a variable rate of bond that has been issued by RBI last year, which is going to give you a coupon or the interest, and your principal remains safe with the RBI. Good bonds to it. So Rohit, the frequency of payment of coupon is going to be decided prior, but frequency of changes in the interest rate would definitely depend upon the economic condition of the country. And that's why during the time of 2020-21, there were a lot of time where RBI had to change the repo rate. The reason was to control the economy, to control the inflation, because RBI could predict that the unemployment status of the economy is going to be shaken. And the moment the unemployment status is going to be shaken and consumer demand is going to get impacted, investments would get impacted by the company. Now, if the interest rates were high at a time where the people where demand for the products was not there, do you think companies would have continued to produce the goods when the rate of interest would have been high in the economy? They would have borrowed money at a higher rate of interest and produced the goods? No. And if they were not producing the goods and if the demand for the goods would have they been there, what would have happened to inflation in the economy? Supply of goods was not there, but the demand for goods will be there. Then what would happen to inflation? Would the economy get impacted? Would the inflation hit or not? So that was the reason the move was taken by the RBI to reduce the interest rate so inflation could be kept under control. So the GDP of the country can be kept under control to a certain extent. So Praneeth, bond yield is and bank FT. So bond yield in terms of what? The rate of interest. So there are two rates of interest, Praneeth. One is the rate of interest at which you borrow money from the market, and the other is the rate of interest at which you make investment. Now, if the rate of interest, your overall rate of interest reduces in the market, did you notice during the time of 2021, even the rate of interest on your FD and other secured or what you say, the fixed returns were also got impacted during that time, or everything was hit low? So Vishwadeep, the most ideal inflation would be somewhere around, I mean, developed economy around 2%, but for developing, we can be fixed at around 4 as well. But definitely the action would be taken because 6 is pretty too much. We need to take up an action. So inflation is basically when there's too much supply of money. How to control the supply of money? Take away the money. Now, when there's too much of inflation, what would happen to your bank FD rate? Will that increase or reduce? What will happen? What would happen? Ideal would be, say, Vishwadeep, ideal would be that 2 to 4% would be ideal. Right now, what we are is not the ideal. But ideally, if you see in the developing economy, we would prefer to be between 2 to 4%. And why a small amount of inflation is preferred? Tell me first that. Why a small amount of inflation is preferred? Why not am I saying that it should be zero inflation economy? Why is that? Why do I want to boost production? To motivate the suppliers to produce the goods in the economy. Otherwise, they would not be motivated to produce the goods. I want them to be motivated to produce the goods, and to keep them motivated, what could be the idea? What could be the idea? That they should be having a small amount of motivation in terms of production of goods and selling of goods at a little higher prices as compared to the cost. Absolutely. Now, looking at the causes of inflation, just summarize what you have seen in the async material. One is your monetary policy, supply of currency. If RBI reduces the interest rates and supplies too much of money in the economy, inflation would definitely increase. Fiscal policy. How much is the borrowings of the government? How much is the taxation? And how much is the additional currency in case the government has to print the notes to repay the debt? All that can also lead to inflation. So monetary and fiscal policy are definitely two tools to be used by the government. But these two tools have to be used in the best possible way to control the inflation. It has to be used in the best possible way to control. And always you would see it has to be a balance of inflation, supply of money, interest rates, taxation. The government and RBI has to constantly be working towards it. Other reasons for inflation could be where there is too much of demand of goods in the market and the supply is not there because maybe the resources are the issue or whatever, then there could be a demand pull inflation. Did we see that demand pull inflation in the case of sanitizers and masks initially in the March 2020? Did we get to see the demand pull inflation, especially because of these necessity items with supply was less in the market, but demand was too much? We did see that. Nice. What did RBI did then? What did the government did? Not RBI. What did the government did? It made those goods as necessity items. So it was completely under the purview of the government to decide the prices. Cost push inflation can come into because of the prices of raw materials have increased, the wages have increased. So the cost of production itself has increased. That could lead to inflation. Because how inflation? If the cost of production for the company increases, are they going to push that increased cost to the consumers? Yes. Vishwadeep, in the case of demand pull, what would happen, Vishwadeep? Here the demand is definitely there, but supply is not there. So your unemployment is going to be there to us. Unemployment status would be definitely lower as compared to the other factors. But again, you are still not able to supply how much is required in the economy. So unemployment status may get a little better in case more people would be employed. But you're saying unemployment would not be there, may not be true. Because still people are unemployed, but there is no raw materials to produce the goods. Yeah. Exchange rates. Have you ever read in the newspaper that rupee has depreciated and rupee has depreciated and RBI has sold dollars to control the exchange rate of rupee? Have you ever read about it? Right? It happens. It happens where the exchange rate is also important. Now, so inflation adjustment, absolutely right. More or less, Kumar Baba, yes, where the value for your currency goes down, but in the technical terms, no. More or less, yes, in the broad terms, you're right, but yes. So exchange rate also has an impact on how is going to be the value of the inflation of the economy. Now, so whether it is supply of money, it is government tax or the expenditure of the government, demand pull, cost push inflation or the exchange rate. All of them are going to have an impact on the inflation. Now tell me, I have seen your question, Divya, but give me some time because then we are going to get into another discussion. So let me just finish the thought and then maybe we come back to it. Yeah. I know this is a very interesting topic, and when you start understanding, you start connecting with the dots in the economy. So when RBI is reducing the interest rates the next time, you need to go back and check what is the reason for the fall in the rate of interest. Why has RBI? Is it a forced decision or is it an active decision taken by the RBI to reduce the interest rates? So if it is going to be a forced decision that RBI takes, that means definitely the economy is not in a very, very safe zone, and RBI wants to protect it, and that's why it is reducing the interest rates in the economy. Whenever you see that rupee has been depreciating and $1 becomes 95 rupees, you would definitely see RBI intervening and increasing the supply of dollars by selling dollars in the market so the rupee value can be controlled, right? Can India buy dollars from other country to control its position of exchange rate with respect to dollars? Can I do that as well? Can it borrow dollars from other countries? It does. It does. It has to protect itself. Right? Now, again, in the case of inflation, we have two things. Now, all you see that monetary or the fiscal policy that we are by, you can by selling of the bonds as well. But again, we need dollar supply to be increased, Kumar Baba. Currency swap, I would not use that word because many of us would not know that word. But Kumar Baba, so whenever they are trying to control the inflation, or they are trying to control the economy, they want to basically control the supply of money. And when they're trying to control the supply of money, they can also be using it in terms of how should I increase the supply of dollars in the market? How would you increase the supply of dollars? Tell me. How would you increase the supply of dollars? By selling dollars in the market. And who will give me the dollars to sell in the market? Either I borrow it and sell it in the market, right? Or exports, very good. So I want to increase the supply of dollars to control the value of my currency. And that's why many times you see that RBI is selling the dollars in the market to control the supply of money or to control the value for money. You'd have read it many times in the newspaper. Okay. So monetary policy, fiscal policy, the forecasted data you look at, and then you see that what has to be done in the economy. Should the RBI control the interest rates? Should the RBI increase the interest rates? Should the RBI government change the exchange rate in the economy? What are they supposed to do? So Nazdeen, what happens? The government is going to have reserves of foreign currency as well, which it earns from exports and so on. And it keeps it. So each of the country keeps certain proportion of foreign reserves with them. So these foreign reserves at the time when they actually need it, then they sell that dollars in the market to the other players in the foreign exchange market. Now, if the dollar is appreciating, when the supply of dollar would increase, what would happen to the value of dollar? What will happen to the value of dollar when the supply of dollar increases in the market? Will the value of dollar come down, and that will then help us to improve the value for rupee? Are we getting it? Yes? Yeah. So this is how the government tries to control. Which is a better method, fixed or floating? So both have their own pros and cons, Kumar Baba. So that's the reason why the semi-fixed, what we say, is the better one. Semi-fixed. So some certain proportion is going to be fixed, and beyond a certain point, it can be a floating. So money, rupee, who is going to bring down or increase the value for money? Is it the demand and supply in the foreign exchange market, Vishwadeep? It's just the demand and supply of the money in the foreign exchange market. Home loan, definitely the fixed rate or the floating rate, Rajan. The answer is going to be based on what is predicted in the economy. If you think that the interest rates are going to fall, then definitely a floating rate of interest. And that has to be done on the basis of analysis that you do about interest rates in the economy. Now, few minutes back, somebody was asking how can we measure the different tools for measuring inflation. Wholesale price index, so that is more on the wholesale prices of goods and services that you measure. CPI is the consumer customer's perspective. Core price indexes where all the goods and services are considered without the food and the energy prices. That is called the core price index. Right? And GDP deflator. Remember GDP deflator? It was something called, remember GDP deflator? Yes, what was that? Nominal divided by real. So you know actually how much is the change or the growth in the prices. Now the different measures that we have it in the market for the inflation. Wholesale price indexes. Now, do you think the prices of commodities by the wholesalers are going to determine how much has been the change in the prices of the goods? Will that help you to understand when they are paying higher prices for the same commodity? Do you think the value of rupee has come down? So CPI or the WPI is for the wholesale price of the goods. CPI is for the consumer price and goods. And when the CPI inflation or the retail inflation we see is going up, when the value increases, that is when RBI steps into and tries to control that inflation, right? Wholesale price index, you look at, just to answer the question of one of the student, how it is measured. So WPI, you look at how much has a price change for goods and services over a period of time. The core commodities in the market, right? It could be the food articles, non-food articles, agricultural crops, it could be included. How much is the increase in prices of those goods? You try to understand that, give you the value of the inflation. Clear? Now, if I want to understand the consumer's perspective, then I'm going to calculate the CPI. Right? WPI, CPI, core inflation, deflator, all this would help you to understand that how much is the value of your goods and services increased or eroded in the market. Now, does that answer your question? Anyone has any questions? How the inflation can be measured? And you will see the percentage change in the WPI, CPI, and if CPI changed from 4.5 to 5%, that means inflation has increased in the economy. And if 4.5% becomes 6%, RBI has to step in and try to bring down the prices of the goods and services. Right now in the economy, do you see CPI has gone high? In terms, do you see the prices of goods have increased in the market for fruits and vegetables? What's your take on that? Have you seen that prices of fruits and vegetables have increased in the market? So see, for us, from consumers' perspective, we look at CPI, the retail index. And RBI generally uses the CPI or the retail inflation to measure the inflation and to set up the monetary policy. It uses the CPI. Yeah. Fine. Okay. What is the time period to calculate WPI and CPI? So generally they look at for quarterly or the 6 months. Quarterly or the 6 months value, and then try to look at the inflated value. Now, comparing inflation and deflation, which one would you recommend for the economy? Inflation or deflation, which one would you recommend? Why? What happens in deflation? The value of goods and services fall. Value of the goods and services falls, right? So do you think if the value of goods and services falls, do you think the firms are going to be motivated to produce the goods? Would they be motivated to produce the goods? They will not be motivated to produce the goods. Just to answer quickly question of Praneet. Now, Praneet, in the WPI and CPI calculation, so there are a lot of goods that is part of it. Almost, so few of the goods may not be there, but majority of the goods are part of it. So they does the adjustment factor before actually releasing the values of the inflation rate in the economy, right? Even if you look at the WPI has 697 items. A few items may turn out to be the outdated ones, but most of them are considered. And that's why when you look at inflation, you look at the CPI, and sometimes the firm economy also looks at the core inflation, where they exclude the prices of the food and the oil prices. And apart from that, they want to see that overall, apart from these volatile items, what has been the change of inflation in the economy. So there are a lot of items. A few may be the ones which have been the outdated ones, but they do the adjustment factor to understand. Because RBI also would not get any benefit when it shows a highly inflated value. Because do you think even my FIIs get impacted when there is high inflation in the economy? Will players from outside market come and make investment in our country when you see that there's inflation in the economy? Do you think they'll come and make investment? Do you think people from outside will come and make investment in your country if the inflation is high, it is outside the control of the economy, or FDI for that reason? Yeah, will they get impacted? They would get impacted, right? FDI, right? Your economy has to be healthy for people to come and make investment. And in an economy with a 2%, 3% inflation is absolutely fine as compared to deflation. Deflation is where there is no demand for the goods and services. The companies have to reduce the prices in order to sell the goods and services in the market. That is called deflation. They would have to reduce the goods and services prices to sell the goods in the market. Now, one very important thing, there was a time, I'll share this example. The Indian economy stays at deflation as inflation hits zero in November. This is 2014 article. I just wanted to show that there was a time, 2014, Indian economy may be staring at deflation, at least statistically, a condition where prices come down below their level a year ago, with inflation rate turning out to be negative. So the prices of the goods would reduce, eroding their profit and forcing them to lay off the employees. So now if deflation is going to be there in the economy, my unemployment would definitely increase. Do you think my GDP would get impacted? Yes. So all the prices of goods fell in the market. Deflation is a real danger. More than you can see, it is a real danger. Inflation is still okay, but deflation is a eroding effect that you could see. That's a big danger that you can see, right? So any economy for that reason, this is 2014 article that I'm talking about. You would prefer that a small amount of inflation is always preferred, but deflation is definitely a big no. Moment there is deflation, unemployment would increase because the firms would get no motivation to produce the goods. They'll start laying off people. Then the layoff people, the purchasing power of people would come down. And what is going to happen in the long run? The unemployment would increase. If any economy is growing rapidly, inflation is inevitable, absolutely Nazneen, and that is where the role of monetary and fiscal policy comes into picture. Definitely beyond a certain point, the action would have to be taken. You can't let it go, even if it is growing. Yes, definitely the monetary and fiscal policy. So a few minutes back, somebody asked how frequently RBI is going to intervene would depend upon the economy. The volatility in the economy, the RBI would decide how frequently it is going to intervene. Unemployment, different types of unemployment, which is a bad that you could think. You've seen this in the async material. Which is the bad one? So frictional unemployment is when people are changing jobs. Structural is economy itself is not performing. Structural when the industrial economy undergoes changes, so the skill set is not there in the people. But do you think because of COVID, the lack of skills may happen in the corporate required, whatever the skills required for employment? Do you think that would get impacted because of COVID and the online teaching and the students, and a lot of gap happened between what was supposed to be learned by the students and what happened? Cyclical is where, can I say cyclical is going to be based on your business cycle? Based on your business cycle. So if my business cycle is not doing good, it is at the recession or the trough phase, will I say that? Where the whole demand in the economy also has fallen down. Yes. Seasonal is temporary. Seasonal is going to be temporary. Frictional is also okay. Seasonal is also okay. Structural also can be corrected. Can skill set be created and be taught to the people? Yes or no? Yes. But which is the baddest one? Which is the bad one? Which is going to be have the long-term impact, the cyclical one. That long-term impact you would get to see. Now I put this link, you can get the unemployment data and the rate. Because do you think my unemployment rate is also going to have an impact on my GDP? Yes. So this is a very good link for getting the data about unemployment. So a few minutes back, somebody was asking that, can I predict the performance of the economy? Yes, you can look at few of the leading and the lagging indicators and try to predict in which direction your economy would be moving. And unemployment data is one of very important parameter for us to know that where our economy is heading towards. Where is it moving? You can predict the economy. Absolutely. Unemployment, no tax, so there would be a fiscal deficit. There would be a fiscal deficit. Yes, Divya has raised hand. Yes, Divya, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Just wanted this clarity between which type of inflation is much worse, sir. India is like cyclical unemployment when it comes. I mean, it is going to be there for mostly many of the economies, because when the business cycle is low, since we are connected very thoroughly with every other country, so it's going to have the effect everywhere. But when you take the case of structural unemployment, it will be specific to that country, and it will hamper the prospects of that nation. I'm talking from the point of view of India only. India has been facing the structural unemployment from quite long time. We've been lacking skills, and post AI, there might be many layoffs. So structural things need much more serious correction, is what I felt.
Domestic perspective, right?
Yeah.
At the local level. But my point was, can structural unemployment be corrected by imparting the right skills to the workers?
Yes.
Or when there's a change in the technology itself of the industry, can we make changes and provide the adequate training to the AI or whatever can be provided to the people and can be corrected?
Yes, definitely. But that also has been like a that's also a long-term solution, no, ma'am?
That's also a long-term solution, but definitely it is a possible solution.
Huh? You mean to say then in cyclical, the solutions are itself minimal?
Complicated. Because you would need the entire correction of the economy in terms of demand, supply, inflation, interest rate, GDP, all has to be corrected. So your monetary, your fiscal policy, everything has to be employed to correct your cyclical unemployment. But when it comes to structural unemployment, if the right skills, now say for example, IT, a lot of changes keeps on happening. So a lot of expenditure goes by the company in improving the employment employees of their company. But that can be definitely be corrected, right? By imparting the right skills. There would be an expense involved, but cyclical is where both monetary and fiscal policy intervention would also be required. Are you getting my point, Divya?
Yes. Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Somebody has structural changes may also create new jobs. Absolutely right, Manmeet. But to create that new jobs, definitely the right training has to be provided. The right training has to be something that has to be provided. Yes, skill upgradation, and very correctly mentioned by Divya, India, that's the major problem. So there is a gap between what we say in our school and college and the corporate world. What is required, the skill, and that is one of the major problems, but can be corrected. Yes, Kumar Baba, go ahead.
I do agree that structural unemployment is a major issue in India.
Yes, definitely.
If you look at, we don't have technology to make defense equipment. We don't have technology to make aeroplanes. Like there are many things are there. I think that is the reason why our GDP also less, though we have a very good population.
Absolutely.
when compared to other countries.
Absolutely, but there is an expense involved in correcting the structural unemployment in terms of training, R&D.
But we don't have that infrastructure also.
Yes, exactly. That's the major reason for our problem.
That is a major reason. Yes, yes. That is a major reason.
That's exactly what even Divya is saying. So absolutely agree. But this is again, if I compare structural and cyclical, which was an easier devil to deal with? Which one is an easier one to deal with, structural or cyclical?
Cyclical.
Why? Cyclical, you would have to consider.
It is in our control, actually, cyclical.
So you mean to say your GDP, your inflation, your unemployment, your interest rates, and everything will come under your cyclical, where you're talking about the aggregate demand and supply in the economy. Okay. Whereas structural unemployment is that I don't know how to teach, and that's why I'm not employed. There is a demand for trainers in the market, but I don't know how to train. But can I be, money can be invested, and can I be made capable of doing that or not? Is it a local problem or not? Is it an industry specific problem or not? Whereas cyclical unemployment turns out to be more the global problem, the more of the economic problem as a whole. What do you think?
Yeah, I do agree.
Yeah, got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So see, unemployment in any form is bad, but even if the economy needs to find out the solution to that problem, the problem is to find out, is it at the local or the global level that we're talking about, right? Balance of payment. What is that? If one structural unemployment is reduced, won't come back by, yes, absolutely. Cyclical. So during the time of COVID, where there was unemployment in the economy, do you think both structural and cyclical continue to add to it? And seasonal unemployment did we see in the hospitality sector? Seasonal unemployment did we get to see in the hospitality sector, travel, tourism sector? Yes, did we get to see that? Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. What is balance of payment? Can we say kind of financial statement for the work economy itself? All the economic transactions, all my debit, credit transactions are recorded in my balance of payment. Can I say it's like the financial statement of the company? Can we say that? So whatever the economy has purchased, the goods, services, any payments made, any payments received, FDI, any kind of borrowings, investments, all the inflow and outflow of money with your country with respect to rest of the world, common book of transaction with respect to the rest of the world is going to be your balance of payment. It is going to be your balance of payment. Now, do you want the balance of payment? Can we say it gives you a record of where the money is coming from, where the money is going for? So you have all your export, import, your services, your payments, your investments you made, other companies made. Do we need a record of all those transactions or not? Yes. All those transactions are required. All your expenses are going to be credit and debit data. We require it, definitely. So here I've shared the link for RBI. I've shared the link for RBI just to show that to show you the current data of the balance of payment. India's current account balance recorded a deficit of $9.6 billion, good or bad, as against a surplus of $6.6 billion in 21-22 and $15.3 billion a year ago. So definitely there is a record of current account deficit that you could see here in 21-22, right? That you could see here that there is a deficit. Why is this deficit? Did the imports happen more than the exports? Could have been the reason. Do you think the imports would have been more than the exports? Net services receipt decreased marginally over the previous quarter. So what is happening? So more imports have happened as compared to exports. Multiple reasons: oil imports, crude oil prices, everything will come into picture. Can you see here your current account for July, September 2021? So current account, goods 104, debit was 149.3. So definitely there was a deficit of 44.4. All inflow and outflow that you could get to see from your country with respect to all other countries of the world becomes your balance of payment. Now, if I want to predict where my economy is going to move, where can I expect the GDP to be moving? Do you think balance of payment would be a statement for me to forecast what could be the probable growth of my economy? Will it be a financial statement showing me all the data of inflow and outflow of money? Will I be able to forecast what could be the status of my economy in the near future? Will that be possible by looking at balance of payment? Yes, definitely you will be getting an idea. Yes, a government, visually. So so RBI is again the one performing the activities for the government. It's for the government itself. So all the money transactions, RBI is anyway just the representative body of the government itself. Yes, yes. So anything that has to do with the kind of money supply, RBI is there, but works on behalf of the government itself. In Pakistan and Sri Lanka, absolutely out of control. Most of them, they are, so that's the reason why, Kumar Baba, you will see that monetary policy is completely in the control of RBI and fiscal policy is with the government. Where it comes to the tax, expenditure is in the control of the government. RBI has the control of the money supply, complete control of money supply, how to increase money supply, how to reduce money supply, everything is in the control of the RBI. Okay. Now going to Phillips Curve, what did you read about it in your async material? Do you think it holds true in all the cases or some cases? What does it say? It says there is an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. So some cases it holds true and there's a lot of controversy around it. That's why I put the two links. But some cases it does hold true, where you can see that as my inflation is more, unemployment is going to be low. Stagflation is not captured. So you would see, yes. That's why it was proved wrong when stagflation occurred in 70s. So because at that time in stagflation, both your inflation and your unemployment both are high. But otherwise, according to Phillips Curve, it says when the inflation is high, the unemployment is going to be low because people are going to get jobs. There will be demand for goods and people will get the wages, how much they require it. But this does not hold true in all the cases. And there's always the research going on. And sometimes the economy, it holds true and sometimes it does not. And as we have very correctly mentioned, during stagflation, which has occurred in 70s, did not hold true because at that time, inflation and unemployment both were very high. So there are the kind of limitations to the Phillips curve, but this is what it says. There's an inverse relationship between the inflation and the unemployment status in the economy. I just want to show you the article. This one. This is the article of, is the Phillips curve dead or alive in India? RBI tries to answer the questions. So there's always a doubt whether the Phillips curve is true all the time or not. They always try to understand the correlation between the inflation and unemployment. So sometimes it holds true and sometimes it does not hold true. And that's why RBI has also written down that article to understand whether it holds true or doesn't hold true. But just one point that you would have to remember is in all the cases, it does not hold true. In all the cases, it does not hold true. But if in case it holds true, do we know the reason for it? Now, high level of employment can only be possible when the inflation is going to be high in the economy. So it always says that, okay, your unemployment status is, or the level of employment is going to be high when the inflation would be high. People would be working to supply the goods in the market at a higher rate of wages. So more employment is going to be there. Inflation is also going to be high. But always a question that happens in the case of all the economies, that whether it holds true or not. It's always a question mark. Clear. That was about macroeconomic indicators. Any questions anybody has? Else we are ready to play a game with the help of our team. Any questions, or we are ready to play a game? Divya, you have raised hand now, or is it the earlier one? Earlier one. All right. So are we ready to play the game? Should we play a game? Okay, let's play a game. So I think Pranjay, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm there.
All right. So do you want to launch your poll first? I mean, your feedback form, or you want to launch the game for us? What do you want to do first for us?
So, ma'am, the game first.
Game. All right. So let me just tell you the rules of the games before I play the game with you. So what I'm doing with all of you is 3 rounds I'm going to play with you, but you are 49 of you. I don't want all of you to play. So I'm going to keep the poll open just for 1 second. That's it. So the poll is going to be functional only for 1 second, and let's see how many of you can participate in that. Now the game is, I'm saying that whether all of you want to come together or collude or defect. Now, if all of you collude, I'm going to give 50 marks to each one of you in managerial economics. Okay, if all of you choose to collude. If all of you choose to collude, except that one person who's going to defect, I just want to give you the normal market behavior, moving you away from macroeconomics to the game theory or the strategies that takes place in the market environment in the real world. So in case if there is one defector, then I'm going to give that defector 100 out of 100 in managerial economics. But then remaining of you, that is 48 of you, would get 0. And if more than one person defects, no one would get anything. All of you would get 0 marks in managerial economics. Are we all together on this? So if all of you collude, I'm going to give you 50 marks to each one of you. If only one person defects, I'm going to give 100 marks to that person. And rest, all of you would get 0. But in case more than one person defects, all will get 0. Is that clear? Yes. So we can launch the poll just for 1 second. 2 seconds at the max, not more than that. Yes, we can launch the poll, please.
Sure, ma'am, I'm launching the poll right now, and I'll count till 2 and I'll close it.
Yeah, just for 2 seconds. Quickly.
2, 3. No, it's 4 seconds. Nobody has written.
No, the 3 questions have come at one go. I didn't want the 3 questions to come at one go. Please stop.
Sure. So basically, there were 3 questions that only one go itself.
I wanted 3 polls. So you can do just take the one question and create a fresh poll immediately. Just take the first question.
Sure, ma'am, I'll do it right away.
Create a new poll. Just take the first question and you can launch that in 3 rounds. No problem. Just take a second. Till then, my students can grab water.
Sure, ma'am, I'll do it right away.
Yeah. So with this activity, what we're trying to understand that collusion is better or not better. So no prompting in the group. No prompting in the group. Not fair. One moment, you'll receive the poll. He's just typing the question. Only one question you can take it up. And the same poll can be put 3 times, no problem.
Done, ma'am. Shall I launch the poll again for the first question?
Yes, yes, yes.
For only 2 seconds, right?
Yeah. Only the first question.
Sure. Here we go. 1, 2.
Stop.
Stop.
Yeah.
Done.
Thank you. All right, let me share the results now. Tell me the score of managerial economics. And I think upgrad team would be there to tell me the right answer. Yes. Tell me how much marks should I give to everyone. So I'm giving 0 to everyone, managerial economics. Yes or no? Class. Yes, Pranjay, can we give them a second chance, please?
Sure, ma'am, we can give them a second chance.
Relaunch. And
Okay,
2
so
seconds.
I'll relaunch this.
Yeah.
For 2 seconds, guys, I'm relaunching it.
Yes. Nasin, the poll is already there. So if you click on poll, you should be able to
One,
see the poll.
2,
Stop.
done.
Again, tell me what's happening. Should I give you marks or not? Yes, come on. If more than one defects, what is the mark score? Quickly. What is the score? 0. Absolutely. What did I do? I did not let you all communicate with each other. I had stopped the communication that you could do with your friends. Now you can message everyone. Thank you so much, Pranjal. Now you can finish your work and then I give them just a quick 5 minutes break and then we continue with that discussion.
Sure, ma'am. Meanwhile, I'll create the polls for the other 2 questions as well.
No, not required. I'm done. This is over.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
So you can put your question there. And students, this was, can you see? Now you are able to communicate with each other and you can message to everyone. I did stop the communication between the two of you. Done. Over, Rohit. What is the overall score that I have to give in managerial economics to all my students? I did give you the chance to get 50 marks, but now what's the score? 0. Right. This is the game theory. This is the strategy that happens in the corporate world where there are few players in the market. Right? Now, if you all of you would have colluded, what would have been your score without any effort? What would have been your score without any effort? If all of you would have colluded, 50 marks would have gone into your pocket, no IA, no term end exam, and you would have got your 50 marks. Now, what did happen? There was definitely the defectors in the market. Why did that defector come into the market? Tell me, what could be the reason for defector to be there in the market? Why somebody wanted to defect 100 marks and did the other, yes, to gain more 100 marks. Maybe they, yes, that is what. So can I say that the third point gave an incentive to the defector to cheat? Can I say the third point gave the incentive to the defector to cheat? Yes. So even though, which market am I talking about where I'm just talking about few players, when I'm talking about colluding, which market am I talking about? Game theory, which market has special features of colluding? Oligopoly, the last topic that you have seen in your async material. Right? Now, all of you would have colluded, have given you 50 marks each in your managerial economics paper. But since there were more than one defector, everybody gets a 0. And just don't take that seriously, just that your marks would be based on your score, but just otherwise. Now, do you think it would have been, do you think it would have been that everybody would have got 50 marks? Do you think better would have been to collude or to defect? Definitely in the oligopoly market also, do you think better would have been to collude or to defect? Collude. But why was the defect there? Because there was always an incentive to cheat. There was always an incentive to cheat. That's the reason why this happens. Are we tired? Do we need break or can I continue? Absolutely. They chose the dominant strategy. Continue. All right. 10 minutes would too much because it's 8:50. 5 minutes should be fine because I want you to come back fresh. Okay, so let's meet in 5 minutes. Yes, so Pranjal, you can continue with your activity if you want in the meantime.
I'll drop the feedback.
Sure. So students, let's meet in 5 minutes and continue with the game theory discussion. Yes, are we all back? Yes, Ashish, your term in the exam is going to have the descriptive questions. It will have descriptive questions. No MCQs. No MCQs, all descriptive. Yeah. Numericals can be there. Yes, Sudhir, numericals can be there. Right? Now coming to game theory, it can be case-set based, Abhinav, or it could be, let me just give me one moment. So term and exam is going to be based for 60 marks. All right, so you'll have 3 questions of 20 marks each. That's going to be the pattern. That can have your subparts can be there. Again, diversification of the risks, what we say. It is going to be closed book, Sanhita. It can be case study based. It can be subparts would be there in the question, so that at least even if you don't know one of the parts, the other one, you'll be able to handle it. That's the reason why. 3 questions of 20 marks each. It would be clear. No MCQs got. That's a pattern. I think last time also when you would have appeared for your other paper would have been the same. It would have been the same. The other, I think business communications you finished last. First term exam, business communication, you haven't appeared for it? Oh, okay. All right. So there'll be 3 questions of 20 marks each descriptive. It is going to have your subparts so that so just Vishwadeep, like you had in the assignment, you had 3 questions, 1 question of 5 marks. It will be on the same pattern, 20 marks questions. You will have 2 or 3 subparts to answer. It will be just the same, nothing different. Or a small case set based on which you may be asked some questions related to it. Same question paper, almost same. So 3 questions of 20 marks each is going to be there. Clear? Okay. Now coming to the game theory. Do you think when the firms are operating in the market, are we interconnected with each other, especially in the case of oligopoly market? Do you think they're interconnected with each other? Do you think my king to demand curve, which I spoke about in the case of oligopoly, actually holds true? If I increase the price, others may not increase the price. If I reduce the price, others may reduce the price. If others also reduce the price, do you think my profit would get impacted? Do you think? Yes, definitely, absolutely. So as a firm, I need to decide what should be my price, what should be my output. Should I increase the price, lower the price? What should I be doing? Should I have new products? Should I keep the new products, keep existing products? What should I be doing, right? So whether I should promote the products, should I do advertisement, elasticity of demand should be there, not there? Should I go for advertisement? Should I spend money on advertisement or not? Now, do you think whichever companies that you're coming from, do you think these questions come into mind? That what action am I going to take? Will that action have an impact on my competitor, or the competitor action, what impact is going to have on my business? Do we really look at those factors in the real world as well or not? So whichever industry, whichever company that you're coming from, do you take up a decision based on the decision of your competitor or peers in the market to a certain extent? Yes. You do consider it, right? Now, in the case of oligopoly, it's more the interdependency that you get to see. In case of oligopoly, either it could be that you collude and play a cooperative game. OPEC is one of the example, oil and petroleum exporting countries. So where you all come together. Now, the game that we all played, was it a cooperative game? The game that we just played in the poll, was it a collusion happened or did not happen? 2 of you defaulted in the second time also when I gave the chance, not happened, right? There's another game called non-cooperative game. Now, Ola and Uber that we get to see in the market, do you think they both cooperate each other or they try to counter each other? Or Flipkart and Amazon, do they play the game of collusion or do they play a non-cooperative game? They play a non-cooperative game, a competitive game, right? A symmetric game would be where the strategy is going to be different by different firms. The game in the 2 players that they're playing, the strategy is not going to remain the same. So there might be few players and they want to enter into the market. The strategy that they're going to follow to enter into the market may not be the same for all the parties. Sequential game. So when Jio came into the market, Jio reduced the prices. What did the other players did? Vodafone and Airtel, what did it do? When Jio entered into the market, they also reduced the price. Were they forced to reduce the price, or was it a decision taken by them because they wanted to, forced one? So sequential game is one after the another, they keep on making changes. And simultaneous could be that during Diwali, New Year, Amazon sale, Flipkart sale, all that happened. That's called simultaneous game, where all of them are doing it simultaneously. Sequential is one after the another. Simultaneous, even the game of it, if I say Ola and Uber, Ola came up with, say, for example, Ola came up with the Ola share first, then Uber came. Is that an example of sequential game? Yes, one after the other, where they try to chase each other's market share. That's called a sequential game. Simultaneous game is all are doing the moves at the same time. So during Diwali, even your Vijay sales, your Chroma, all of them giving you the sales at the same time with discounted prices. Right? This was the activity. Now going to the further. Right? So these are the different types of game. Now the one game example that I want to provide you is the symmetric game. A symmetric game was where each one has a different strategy. Symmetric would be what? So if I'm playing chess with, say, for example, Vandana, and I am making the same moves as Vandana, will it be a symmetric game or the asymmetric game? So I've taken white, black, and Vandana has taken white. Vandana is playing the game. I'm just exactly copying Vandana. Will it really matter whether Vandana is taking black or I'm taking white? Will the game change or the game remains the same? Yes, but just let's see initially what is going to happen. It's absolutely similar game. Will really matter whether, yes, if there is a check, but otherwise it remains the same. Let me give you an example of a symmetric game and tell you that where does oligopoly, they try to reach the equilibrium position. Now, can I tell you a story with your permission? If you're interested, can I tell you a story? Story is okay. So today is a good day, story day, game day. So it is going to be a good one. All right. So just give me a moment. Let me tell you the story. Okay. So this is a story of the prisoner's dilemma. So there are two robbers. Okay. They got arrested by the police. And the police was suspecting that the crime was committed by these two robbers, but the police did not have any idea that who had actually done the mistake. It had no idea actually who had done the mistake. So in order to sustain the charges, they decided to ask them questions separately. The robbers cannot communicate with each other before answering the questions. And if you remember, when I had was playing the game with you, I had changed the settings of the messages and made sure that you are not able to communicate with each other purposely, because I did not wanted you to communicate. Here also, the police did not let the robbers communicate with each other. Fine. Now, what do you think would be the right strategy for both the robbers? Look at these conditions. Just take a pic of these conditions, please. Take a pic of these conditions. So that when I take you to the next slide, you know that conditions. So if both the robbers are going to deny the charge, both will be released, but will have to pay a fine of 40,000 rupees each. If both of the robbers accept the charge, both will be released, but will have to pay a fine of 70,000. If one of them accepts the charge and the other one denies it, the one who will accept will be fined 30,000 and will be allowed to walk free. And the one who denying charges will be fined rupees 1 lakh. Fine. Have you taken a pic of this page? Okay. Now let me put the thought over here, what you have taken the pic. If both the robbers are going to accept the charges, they will pay a fine of 40,000 each. If both the robbers accept the charges, they both will be released and they pay a fine of 70,000 and 70,000. If robber one accept the charges, if one of them accept the charge and the other one denies the charge, The one who is accepting the charge will be fined 30,000 and the other one will pay a fine of 1 lakh. All the blue ones is robber 1 and all the black ones are for robber 2. If robber 1 denies the charge and the robber 2 accept the charge, so one who accepts the charge will pay a fine of 30,000. One who denies will pay a fine of 1 lakh. If both of them deny the charges, they'll pay a fine of 40,000 each. Payoff matrix, is it clear to everybody? Is the payoff matrix clear to everybody? Blue one is for robber 1 and the black one is for robber 2. Now tell me, if I am an external person, which one is the best strategy for me? Accepting the charge or denying the charges? For both. So if both of them deny the charge, they pay a fine of 40,000. Okay, right? Now let's see what is the action they will play. Now say for example, we all are robber 1. If you all are robber 1, what are the 2 things that I'm going to think? I'm in a separate room. So I'm thinking if robber 2 accept the charges, what should be my strategy? If robber 2, I'm robber 1, we all are robber 1. So if I'm going to be thinking that if robber 2 accept the charge, which one is a better deal for me? Accepting the charge and pay a fine of 70,000 or denying the charge and paying a fine of 1 lakh, which is better for me? Accepting the charge? Everybody? Okay. If robber 2 thinks, what is the other thought the robber 1 can have? That if robber 2 denies the charges. If robber 2 denies the charges, which is a better deal for me? Accept the charge and pay 30,000 or deny the charge and pay 40,000, which is better? Accept. Now, as robber 1, which is the dominant strategy for you? Which is the dominant strategy for you as robber 1? Accepting the charges. Fine. Is that clear? Now let's all become robber 2. Now if I am robber 2, what can I think? That if robber 1 accept the charges, if robber 1 accept the charges, which is a better deal for robber 2? Accepting the charges and paying 70,000 or denying the charges and paying 1 lakh. Accepting the charges and paying a fine of 70,000 is better if robber 1 accept the charges. If robber 2 denies the charges, what is better for me? Accepting the charge and pay 30,000 or denying the charge and pay 40,000? Accepting. Now, what is common here? Is it a symmetric game whether robber 1 or robber 2 is playing? What is the dominant strategy for both of them that you are suggesting? Accepting the charges. So dominant strategy. Now, is this strategy that decision that has been taken irrespective of the move of the other party, can we say? Can this strategy of accepting the charge be taken irrespective of the move of the other party? So if robber 2 is going to accept the charge, still robber 1 accepting the charge is a better deal. If robber 2 denies the charge, still for robber 1 to accept the charges is a better deal, right? And the same story holds true for robber 2 as well. So my dominant strategy, irrespective of everything, is to accept the charges. Dominant strategy for robber 1 and robber 2 is to accept the strategy. What is this dominant strategy? The best payoff, the best profit payoff that you can get, irrespective of the move of your rival. Now, sitting in another room, can I really know that what my robber 2 is going to do, accept the charge or deny the charges? But what have I done as robber 1? That irrespective of the move of the robber 2, have I decided what should be my move? My move is to accept the charges irrespective of the move of the robber 2. Now, whether I shuffle robber 1 or robber 2, does my dominant strategy change or dominant strategy still remains the same to accept the charges? It does not change, right? So, Prisoner's Dilemma was the name of this game, which was played in order to understand that why cooperation is difficult for oligopolists. Now, in case if they both would have the best ideal scenario, they both are accepting the charges, right? And when we both are accepting the charges, they're paying a higher fine, 70,000. What would have been an ideally the best scenario for them? To pay a fine of 70 or to pay a fine of 40 was better? What would have been better for both of them? 40,000. But what did they went for? Denying the charges would have been an ideal for them when both of them would have colluded. But what have they taken? accepting the charges. Why have they accepting the charges? Because irrespective of the move of the other party, their strategy was not changed. So prisoner's dilemma is a concept that was introduced in order to understand that why cooperation is difficult in an oligopoly. Yes, Manvi. So in the case of game theory, that's why we're trying to understand that your business will be very much dependent on the competitor's business. And here also, Manvi, the decision that you have taken to accept the charges, isn't it based on the decision of your competitor or your peer, the robber too? It's not an independent decision that you have taken. It's a decision that you have taken based on the whatever be the move of your competitor in the market, your move you're trying to decide. So aren't you interdependent on your competitor? Aren't you interdependent on your competitor? Here also, Manmeet, you're trying to understand that, okay, whatever be the move of my competitor, what should be my move? Definitely you're interdependent here as well, right? Dominant strategy is to defect. What was the dilemma here? But it holds true in both accept, do not accept. So Manmeet, but here, yes, but you want to take up a decision that where if what your two is going to do, accept or deny. You want to make up a dominant strategy. You want to reach a Nash Equilibrium that even if my robber two is going to accept or deny the charges, my strategy should not change. You're trying to reach that equilibrium status. In payoff matrix, for both accepting and rejecting the charges will be in diagonal right. I did not understand your question. Saptarshi, just to make your life simpler, all the blue ones is for the robber one and all the black ones are for robber two. So this is my first quadrant, 70,000, where robber one accept the charges, robber two accept the charges. So 70 and 70. If robber one denies the charges, it's 1 lakh for robber one and 30,000 for robber two if it accepts the charges. So this is my first one, second one. This is for robber two, this is for robber one. Is that clear? Saptarshi, is that clear? All the blue ones is for yes. Let me just allow you to speak. Yes, please go ahead. Yes, Saptarshi.
Hi, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so basically I was talking about the arrangements like the both accepting the charges and both denying the charges. Those are in diagonal arrangements to each other, right?
Yes, yes.
That should be in diagonal. That should be the way how the payoff metric should be.
Absolutely right. This is my accepting the charges and this is my denying the charges by vote. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
Yes? Okay. Now, when you use the word dominant strategy, so the firms want to be very, very careful that irrespective of the move of my other party, what should be my strategy? So the dominant strategy becomes that irrespective of your rivals, you will make your profit. Now, this was the normal concept. One example that I want to show you. Let's look at this one. Okay, Coca-Cola and PepsiCo, close competitors of each other. Now, here the two competitors are battling it in the marketplace. If both the firms keep prices high, profit for each company would be $500 million. So if both of them cooperate, Coca-Cola and PepsiCo cooperate, both will get a profit of 500 and 500. If one of them drop the price, that is defect, but the other one does not. So if one cooperates and the other one defects, the one who defects will get a profit of 750 and one who cooperates will get 0 because all of its market share will move to the other party. And if Coca-Cola defects and PepsiCo cooperates, Coca-Cola will get the maximum profit and PepsiCo profit would be 0. If both the companies reduce the price, the increase in soft drink consumption offsets the lower price and profits for each company increase to 250. Now, if I'm looking at where is the best incentive here, cooperate or defect, which is the best incentive? 750, 500 or 250, which is the best incentive? Now, if Coca-Cola is trying to cooperate and PepsiCo also cooperate, both will get a profit of 500. But if Coca-Cola cooperates and PepsiCo defects, PepsiCo will get a profit of 750. So do you think PepsiCo would want to cooperate or defect? PepsiCo would want to cooperate or defect? Defect. If Coca-Cola defects, it will get a profit of 750 and PepsiCo would get a profit of 0. Will there be an incentive for Coca-Cola also to defect? Yes. So what will think if both of them is thinking defecting is better and both of them defects, what is the maximum benefit that they would get? Because they would not know who is going to defect. They would not know who is going to defect. So what would be the ultimate benefit that they would get, both of them? 250 and 250. But if both of them would have colluded and cooperated, what would be the benefit that they would have made in the real scenario? 500. So do you think that, yes, do you think the firms colluding is always the best scenario in the case of oligopoly, but there's always an incentive to cheat? There's always an incentive to cheat, but colluding is always the best scenario. Now, there's a term called Nash Equilibrium. What is that Nash Equilibrium? Nash Equilibrium means, what was the Nash Equilibrium here? My dominant strategy. What was my Nash Equilibrium here? My dominant strategy, where whatever be the move of my other party, my move is not changing. That's called the Nash Equilibrium, where no player has got any incentive to change my decision to accept the charges, my decision to defect. It's not changing with the change in the move of the other competitor. Absolutely. Trust will always be an issue, Rohit. So in spite of the fact that colluding is always the best option, but still the firms defect, because there's always an incentive to cheat. And as a consumer, do we really want the firms to collude or to defect? As consumers, what do we want? Do you want them to collude or defect? Defect. For us, if they defect, it's better for us, because then, yes, their profits would be, they're going to work on the prices. And if they collude, they would become the masterminds for deciding the prices. So colluding, cartel is always the best option, but there is always an incentive to cheat. That is the reason that happens in the real world scenario as well. Now, in the oligopoly market, anyone coming from oligopoly market, any one of you whom you think that you come from oligopoly market where there are few players and there are a lot of interdependency that you have? Ashish coming from telecom industry? Are you from telecom? Okay, great. Great. Nazneen, which industry? Kumar Baba has raised hand. Yes. Which in the, you want to share something?
Now, right now, I'm working in Panasonic. Before that, I was in oligopoly industry only, because there are only 3 manufacturers available for making meters, energy meters. So once there was a tender from the government, so our management decided that we'll collude each other. So we decided that we'll quote the same price so that we'll get the 50% business. Both will get. So accordingly, we decided and we submitted a tender with the same price. Both came to my office, same office. We made the tenders and in presence of everybody, we closed the tenders also, sealed, and we went there.
Okay.
So we submitted. So after what happened, game changed after that. As you said, now there is always a.
I was waiting for this. Yes. Okay. What happened?
So since it's a government tender, first they called to open the bids. So first they called us. So we went there. So because we want to, since we already decided to collude, they asked me to change the price, to reduce the price. We said no, because there is agreement. So they said, okay, fine. Then we came out. Then what happened? Competitor went. So they reduced the price.
Yes. So again, there was an incentive.
So we lost.
You lost it. Absolutely.
We lost the tender. Yes.
And after that, did you even try to collude later?
No, after that, I had cheated them again. Next time.
All right. Thank you. Yes. So I think this was a very good example that was being, there's always an incentive to cheat. There's always an incentive to cheat that we need to remember. And even in oligopoly, so this is one of the examples that he has brought out, there is a lot of models that get played in the oligopoly market, especially say, for example, the homogeneous goods in the oligopoly market, say, for example, the petroleum industry. Now, have you ever seen that in the petrol industry as well? That have you ever noticed that in case if there is a changes in the petrol prices or anything, or any of the facility, do you think that there is a lot of the pull in the market that happens? Any of the gas stations, they're providing something, a free service or anything. Have you seen any changes happening in terms of demand for that petrol industry or the petrol pump, that particular center? So in case they do not have the liberty to play with the price, but in case if the government had the liberty to play with the price, and if they were all homogeneous goods, then the Bertrand model will come into picture. So here what happens, firms will compete on price. So they'll keep on playing with the price so much that ultimately all the firms in the oligopoly would start supplying the goods at the same price. And price is equal to marginal cost would come into picture, beyond which they can't reduce the price. So ultimately what would happen, the price of firm A will be equal to price of firm B. So firms compete on price, and ultimately price of both firms will become equal. And they will start supplying at marginal cost, right? So then this is going to be the scenario in the Bertrand model. So Bertrand model is used in the industry where the goods are homogeneous. When the goods are, because Manvi, there is no other choice, we had to collude, but we did not collude, and we kept on playing on the prices. So what is the maximum? MR is equal to MC, price is equal to MR is equal to MC would become the scenario. Because that's the where point I will stop, because anyways I'm not ready to collude, right? So I'm going to, I want to kill my profit, because I'm competing on price. But till what point both you're not ready to collude? So what is the last price you will stop at? MC. My price will become equal to MC. That would be the point I would just stop and let the market control the prices after that. If there are two players, both of us is going to stop at a price of both the firms equal to marginal cost, I would stop at that price. Consumers will benefit, absolutely. Carnot model, what happens is, here, two players are there in the market, and firm B thinks that A's output is fixed. Yes, so then for homogeneous goods, Bertrand model is good. Now coming to Carnot model. Here what happens, one of the firm thinks that the output of other firm is constant. Let's look at this small example. Suppose that the two firms in the market for toasters, firm A will determine how much is the output of firm B, and A will think that this output of B is to be kept constant. And it will say, okay, remaining market demand is from me. What will firm B be thinking? What will firm B be thinking? That firm A output is constant, let me increase my output. What is going to happen? Who will benefit? A thinks B output is fixed, B thinks A output is fixed, right? There are only two producers of cotton in Westeros. If the total demand is 20,000 tons per annum, Reach produces 15. Only 5,000 tons are left for Dawn. Dawn produces more than 5,000 tons. The market price will stop hurting. What will happen? I think that there is a demand for 20 units. 15, the competitor is supplying, let me supply 5 more in the market. And the other one thinks that they will take only 5, let me supply more in the market. What will happen to the overall supply in the market of the goods? Increase. What will happen to the prices? What will happen to the prices? Reduce. So Carnot model is always used where we are thinking that the quantity of the goods produced by the other party is fixed. Firm B enters the market thinking that firm A output is going to remain the fixed. It's not going to change. So Carnot model says that I'm going to think that, okay, if there are 20 units demand in the market, 15 is captured by firm A, 5 is all mine. But in case if I produce more than 5, there's 2, and B also, firm A also thinks similar. And if the supply increases, the price comes down. Who gets the benefit? Who gets the benefit? Again, the consumers would get the benefit. More supply, the demand is less. Who will get the benefit? The consumer. Stackleback model is very interesting. It's a leader-follower model. Now, just let's look at Asian Paints. Is Asian Paints the leader in the paint industry? Asian Paints, right? The leader firm gets a majority market share in the industry. And all the other firms which entered after that will be the followers, and they will not become the market leaders. So then if Asian Paints has, say, for example, 40% of the market share, and remaining players have all small, 5%, 10%, they will capture only the remaining 60% of the industry. So they are just the leader-follower model. So whoever is a market leader, they don't trouble the market leader. They only fight for the remaining 60% of the market, nothing more than that. So if Nestle is the leader in the baby foods, right? So if baby food, early bird advantage, yes. Other firms will react based on market leader decisions, but it will only target for the remaining 60% of the market share. Absolutely. Carnot model, what happens? We treat each other as equals. Stackelberg model, we treat the market leader as the leader and we try to capture the remaining of the market. And we think that wo market leader ka 40% market share is fixed. Remaining 60% is for other players to fight. So Carnot, Stackelberg, there are three more, and Burtnard model. Burton model is very easy because it's for homogeneous goods. Carnot and Stackelberg is for differentiated products. Stackelberg model is the model of the market leader and you try to take the remaining of the stake. These are the different games that's played in the market. Any questions here? So game theory, I should know the meaning of game theory. Nash Equilibrium, dominant strategy, Burton model, Carnot model, and Stackelberg model. Any questions? Shoot. Are we clear on any questions we have? Yes, so yeah. So cartel is basically where cartel is basically when you form a collusion. Now, OPEC, oil and petroleum producing countries, if they all come together, they become a monopoly. So cartel is basically where the firms come together and oligopoly firms start behaving as monopoly. Yes, is that clear? So I am three players in the market, but I'm going to act as a monopoly. So our prices are same. We decide that, okay, if there are three players in the market, 33.33, Sudeep will take the market share, 33.33, Nazim will take, 33.33, Dimple will take. That is equally decided what could be the price and quantity. So the consumers are not deciding, it is the firms have decided equally the price and the quantity. So even they are firm A, B, and C, but they're behaving as the monopoly. Yes, Nazneen, here is your game slide. Any questions here you have, Nazneen? Yes, Praneet, but in the very well async material that has been covered, max, min, and min max strategy. That has been covered there. So that's time is the only constraint that I did not include, nothing more than that. Yes, Nazneen, any questions here? Sure, no problem. Somajit says, can you explain how would I reach Nash equilibrium with the example? So you can give very much example of this one also, Somajit. Now, what is the Nash equilibrium here? For both the firms, Coca-Cola, what could it think that if PepsiCo is going to cooperate? Okay, PepsiCo is going to cooperate. What is the dominant strategy for Coca-Cola? To cooperate or to defect and get a profit of 750? What do you think, Somajit? What is better? If defect, and if PepsiCo is going to defect, what should I do as Coca-Cola? Cooperate or defect and get a benefit of 0 or 250 to defect? Fine. Now, Here, the dominant strategy is to defect, right? Is to defect. Now, if I think from PepsiCo's perspective, also the answer would be the same, defect. So Nash Equilibrium says that whatever be the move of the other party, the strategy is not going to change unilaterally for any player, and it would remain the same, is to defect. That is called the Nash Equilibrium. That means you are at an equilibrium position where you get no incentive to change your move, no incentive to change your decision, irrespective of the move of the other party. Is that clear now? Swamiji? So Sudeep, you are most welcome. Any examples, if asked, you can give hypothetical examples as well. You can create a ABC examples also and give. Aishwarya, questions in the term and exam would be based both on, see, live session discussion is again based on async material. So it will be a combination of both live as well as async material. And live is anyways based on detailed discussion on the async material. So first request is go through the async material completely, then go through the PPTs, so that would help you. That's my advice, Aishwarya. Yes? Thank you so much, Divya. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night, take care, and all the very best. So Rekha, just said advice, now you know all the topics, right? Just go through the async material once and then go through the PPTs. It should help you. In case of queries, to connect with the, yeah, you can put it in the portal. Yes. Thank you so much. All right, request, in case you haven't filled the feedback form, please do the needful. Good night and take care and all the best.